Welcome to the Beyond Normal podcast. My name is Kenny Groom. I'm the host. Right now, I'm excited to have Sterling Smith. He's the founder of Sandbox Commerce, which is the go-to choice for businesses trying to build up their mobile app experience. Thanks for joining us, Sterling.
It's my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me, Kenny.
Appreciate that. All right, I want to hop right into things with you because I know you have a lot to tell about your story. So I want you to give us just a little bit of background throughout your career and how you landed in this spot as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I was born in Dallas, but raised in Northeast Texas. And thanks to exposure from my parents, who were both educators, I quickly fell in love with technology, specifically, initially kind of like playing games on computers, but shortly thereafter, software development. Again, very novice level software development. The first language that I played around with is QBasic in the computer lab at this private school that my mom taught history at. And the fortunate few who knew at a very young age what I wanted to do with my life, even though I didn't even know it was called software development or computer science until later in life, but ended up majoring in computer science at the University of Texas at Tyler, and then accepted a job with Walmart in Bentonville, Arkansas as a computer programmer analyst. And really quick, kind of to bring you up to speed pretty quickly, I spent just over a year at Walmart in Bentonville, Arkansas, and then went to go work in Doha, Qatar for Lockheed Martin. Didn't know where it was whenever Lockheed reached out. I didn't know where it was, but was accepted the job on a challenge from my brother, who told me I wouldn't do it. But it was actually, at the time, life-changing money and a life-changing opportunity for me to work abroad. And I'll say that was a transformative experience. I was definitely more of not necessarily a country bumpkin, but definitely had a limited perspective on the world. My worldview was limited, and that kind of gave me a global perspective. So did software development abroad in my early 20s, and then went to go work for Booz Allen Hamilton in Washington, D.C. From there as a software development and management consultant. And I spent about 5 years working for Booz Allen on various, primarily government contracting projects. When about halfway through my tenure there, about 2.5 to 3 years in, had the realization that if I'm not careful, I might be here for the rest of my life, which was not necessarily a bad thing. But I saw guys who were doing, making a lot of good money, who were across the hall from me. They'd been there for 30 years. And I was like, this is great, but it's not for me. I just felt like there was a higher calling, so to speak. So after some self-reflection, decided to work with my leadership to relocate me to Texas. I really wanted to come to Austin, Texas initially, but there were not any opportunities just yet in Austin. So I was relocated to San Antonio, Texas. Worked there for a year to fulfill my engagement, and then left to kind of start my entrepreneurial journey. And the first company that I started was, when I moved from San Antonio to Austin, was a company called Launch Partner. And what Launch Partner is it's a kind of like your traditional software development agency, but we took a very unique approach to developing software, with the mindset that we should focus on building an MVP for subject matter experts who were non-technical, that wanted to build their vision and needed help building that vision. And our philosophy was that if it took longer than 8 weeks to build, it probably was not an MVP. So we kind of went in with those subject matter experts to, solve the problem they were looking to solve, but really, basically took out anything that was not related to core functionality. And after about 3 years into that was 6 years ago when I started that, within 3 years, I effectively built the company to generate at least, just over $1 million in revenue, and was kind of working with mentors of mine to help me determine what the next chapter of my life might look like. And one mentor really encouraged me to build my own product, because I've been building products for other companies. And he said, "Hey, Sterling, I'd like you to think about where you can build a product and what that product might look like and what problem it might solve." And he was a venture capitalist, but really had a heart to help, early stage founders of color. And so he was imparting these nuggets of wisdom in me after we met, and kind of over several months working with him, I came to the conclusion that it would be really interesting if we built technology that allowed non-technical folks in the retail space to drag and drop their way to building a fully native application to increase engagement with their customers on mobile devices. That was kind of the initial thesis statement. And his initial response was, wow, is there nothing like that exists right now? And while solutions like WordPress and Wix and Squarespace all not only existed, but were very popular, we couldn't find any category king, so to speak, in the space of mobile app developers, and specifically mobile app developers, no-code solutions, they call it now, no-code solutions for retailers. And so we were like, okay, that means they've either been unsuccessful or this is a novel idea. But we quickly learned that there were several retail tech entrepreneurs and pioneers that tried it and failed. And upon reflection, kind of came to the conclusion that many of those retailers were just too early or ran out of funding, et cetera, et cetera. Through my network, I was actually able to grab coffee and speak with some of those no-code pioneers and learn what worked, what didn't work, and learned a few things to really stay away from. It was very valuable for me. Fast forward, today what we built is this drag and drop app builder for retailers that helps them build a mobile application. When I say mobile application, I mean iPhone and Android application that consumers download from the App Store that are really optimized for several things. The core functionality is to help those consumers that are considered the brand loyalist discover products, receive push notifications about sales. In this current day and age, use it to deliver contactless shopping experiences between the brand and retailer. So curbside commerce is one new solution that we're the only provider that provides a solution like this to date. But there are quite a few other things that we do. But in a nutshell, what we're up to at Sandbox Commerce is helping those retailers that traditionally would need to spend $200,000 a year or more to build an application, to do that for as little as $99 a month to get started. And then to really increase engagement with their most loyal customers, or as we call them, their best customers.
Got it.
That's a long answer, but yeah.
No, I like the story. I like how you reference, using that kind of technical curiosity that you had really your whole life and kind of transitioning in what you're doing now. And you were building products for other people and decided, hey, I want to build something of my own. Kind of want to go off script a little bit. What would you say is the biggest difference building something that is your idea versus building something for other people?
Yeah, I mean, what I can say is that, typically when you're building something for someone else, what I can say is that we, at my first company, took pride in the fact that we treated the products that we built for our customers as our own. I think in order to really do a great job and to make sure the code is maintainable, scalable, clean code, taking considerations and to heart that the typical third-party developer doesn't take to heart. We've always taken ownership in the work that we've done because this is kind of our name on the line. That's kind of how we feel about it. However, no matter how hard you try, you're not going to build that application to the extent you can't build an application to the extent that you would build it for yourself, because for yourself, or when you own the business, you're living and breathing with that application and that application alone. What I can say is with the first company, I spent a lot of time kind of, spending 3 to 6 months on a project and then moving on to the next one, or working on 2 projects at once. Whereas in this project, I literally have lived, breathed, ate, slept, no code solutions for the retail space specifically, and now really going down, solving problems related to curbside commerce and contactless engagement due to the new normal with COVID-19, et cetera. I've literally lived, breathed, ate, slept that for the last 3+ years. So with that being said, you just don't have that opportunity to really live with the problem as much as you would if you were the founder of a company. And in addition to just focusing on the technical side, as the founder of this company of Sandbox Commerce, I'm also handling every other aspect of the business for the most part, especially as a kind of an underfunded company by anyone's estimation, dealing with everything from accounting to customer success to quality assurance to human resources. Dealing with all that with a small team is definitely unique when you're building a product for yourself. I mean, on your own.
Wearing all those hats.
Yeah.
So you touched on something, you mentioned COVID. That's obviously something that's impacting every business, every industry right now. How do you see, what's your outlook now that you've kind of lived and breathed that retail tech kind of air for as long as you have? But what's your gut feeling, your kind of instinct tell you about what retail is going to look like moving forward? Because, there have been some negative kind of tones just in the world around, is retail going to exist in its current form?
Right. No, that's a great question. And what I'll say is that, analysts from Goldman Sachs to McKinsey have chimed in on the same topic. And I think that one commonality there is that there's a understanding that the retail space has accelerated from an adoption of new technology perspective over the last 3 or 4 months, more than 4 or 5 years, as it was projected. I mean, I think that most analysts and industry insiders will say that they were expecting more retailers to leverage technology to increase engagement with their customers over time, but it was going to happen in several years pre-COVID. And what we're seeing is now having a robust web experience, a responsive mobile experience, and native mobile application is a must for the growing retailer. Some of the retailers that we grew up knowing about, and brands as well. Lucky just filed for bankruptcy within the last week. J. Crew is, I think, Chapter 11 bankruptcy right now. Is undergoing that. And many of the retailers that we know and love that were either all or predominantly focused on the physical brick and mortar space are in trouble right now. And that's not something that brings me joy, but the silver lining for companies like Sandbox, who have been, frankly, fully remote since late 2017. Our teams have fully been working remotely. And we've been working on solving problems for the future of retail for the last 3 years. We're in a very strong position. And I'm super excited about the opportunity that we have to listen, to observe, and to collaborate with the best retailers to solve some of the hardest problems that exist. We're more prepared than most any other company that exists right now, frankly, to help these retailers solve these problems. And I'm humbled to be in the position, and our team is working around the clock to make sure that we meet the demand. And when I talk to the demand, I'll say in closing that we're seeing sustained growth, even above Black Friday months, leading up to Black Friday months, since the last 2.5 months. And so still a very small, lean team, but we are capital efficient and, incredibly scrappy. And so we're rising to the occasion. So shout out to the team.
I think you touched on something there where it's what your business is doing. A lot of a lot of entrepreneurs right now have to do it, right? They have to kind of buckle down. You're going to have to wear multiple hats. You're going to have to kind of dig deep. And the ones that are able to make it through this in a situation like yours, you guys are going to be really in a prime position to move forward. As your industry kind of pivots, you're going to be in a good spot. So I appreciate you giving that kind of insight. So, we're dealing with COVID right now. That's the first pandemic, the first issue that's really plaguing us right now. The other one is really, just around the conversations that, we're having right now around the racial injustice going on here in America and, honestly worldwide. So, how is that impacting you kind of in your day life? And, what kind of challenge does that present for your business moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the immediate effect, and it's hard to put your thumb on an answer like that, to just nail it down. There are so many layers. First and foremost, my heart breaks for the families of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and the communities that were impacted by their losses. And we're having incredibly important discussions as a nation, things that people of color have been aware of and have been experiencing, frankly, as long as I've been alive. So, as I think through how it impacts the business, obviously this impacts the businesses in more ways than we have time to discuss during this podcast. But what I can say is that, if I want to focus on the positive, which I will, it's certainly the combination of COVID-19 and these injustices that have occurred over the last month or so has forced and is forcing us as a nation, collectively, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, et cetera, to look at the systems that are in place and how they impact adversely Black people at every socioeconomic strata, and specifically as it relates to what I'm up to, Black founders see less than 1% of venture capital funding. And this is something that has been said literally a million times since I've been in the startup space, from founders of colors, investors who have a national stage have been speaking about this, and allies as well in other communities have been speaking about this, but the needle hasn't moved at all. Not 1% since I've been, growing my company. And it's been incredibly frustrating. And part of the reason why, and I may have glossed over this, but part of the reason why I still have my other company and I haven't exited that company is because that company has provided much needed revenue to sustain the business in times where VCs were not effing with me. And what's crazy is, just as recent as this week, I'm talking with investors who are telling us that in order to write a seed stage check, that they need to see $50,000 a month in recurring revenue, and with a straight face. And I appreciate that, but it just doesn't feel real when we have competitors in the space who have literally not, I wouldn't say that they've robbed our IP, but they've been in our back end looking at how we're doing things while we were in beta, and they were even earlier than us, and figuring out how we're doing things. Those same white founders have raised $16 million, which is just over 16 times what we've raised to date. And investors are still checking cheddar like a food inspector, as Jay-Z says. And it's crazy to me. And so the good news is that today, as we're talking right now, we're having multiple discussions with investors. And so for those that don't get it, or for those that aren't ready to take the leap with someone who doesn't necessarily pattern match, no problem. We're focusing on the yeses right now. And so the long answer is that we're excited about the attention that founders of color, specifically Black founders, are receiving, and the attention that the disparity in financing, among other things that exist, that's really affected the Black community as a whole. We're excited to see those discussions really get some much needed air, so to speak. They've been acknowledged in the past, but nothing's changed. And so I hope that one day I can be a part of that change. I hope that I can really be in a space to write checks to founders who may not have been considered because of attributes that just don't matter, that don't determine whether or not a company is viable, the market's viable, the team's viable. I think that that's something that we've been on, and several of my friends have been on the adverse side of, and I'm excited to see that change. And I think that more than ever, this is something that's sorry about that. This is something that is changing right now.
I appreciate that. You had a lot of nuggets there. I'm only really, this is episode 4 of my podcast, but, entrepreneurs like yourself, I think you guys are really, you guys, whether you know it or not, are really setting the precedent right now, right? So, people, 5 years from now, they're going to look at the things that you guys are doing, and the conversations that you're starting to have, and you're really a trailblazer. So I appreciate you for, just sticking to the grind and, owning your piece of the pie. You have a lot of, you have a voice right now. We all really do. And you're utilizing yours, I think, to the best of your ability. So I appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
In closing, I always, like to pass it to my guests, and I just want to see, how do people, one, kind of reach out and kind of learn more about you and the business as well, right? Because we want to make sure people are able to utilize Sandbox Commerce. And if, on the back end of that, if there's anything you want to kind of leave the podcast off with, I want to throw it to you.
Yeah, man. My goal in coming on this podcast is to help raise awareness about what we're up to. And I want to just say thank you for providing the opportunity for me to do just that. I think that everything we've done has been grassroots, and our customers have been incredibly supportive of what we've been doing to date. And our community, Kenneth, has been really important to the growth that we've seen. So I just want to say thank you for having me on the podcast. Now, how do you get in touch with me? I'm on the social media platforms at Sterling Smith. And I actually have a website that I recently redesigned that kind of gives you kind of a brief summary of what we're up to. And I usually keep it up to date with blog posts and things like that. But you can find me at sterling.ooo. That's the letter OOO. And my DMs are open. One thing that I'll just leave you with and your audience with is that if there's any way that I can be helpful, a motto that I live by is as you climb, lift. So as I'm like climbing up the side of the mountain to try and reach the peak, I'm also here to help out other people, because I think that the experiences that I'm going through are probably more relevant to a person that's 6 months or 12 months behind me in their journey than if a VC who's a non-operator or someone who's been removed for 5 years. That's what I've experienced. My favorite mentor and advisor and investor is a guy by the name of Morgan Linton, who's a founder of a company called Bold Metrics. And I love Morgan whenever we get a chance to talk because he's able to give me feedback and real world insight into things that he just finished experiencing. And he's kept it real with me since day one, as well as investing in the company in an early stage. So that being said, that's what I'm here for. I'm following his example. And so if anyone needs any help solving problems as it relates to their businesses, want to dive deeper into some of the challenges I'm having, if you want an extended free trial, whatever, man, holler at me. I'm here.
Appreciate that, Sterling. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody, to the Beyond Normal podcast. Thanks, Sterling.
Thanks for having me, Kenneth. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast. I can be reached by cell phone via call or text at 980-263-9921. I'm interested in connecting with other business owners across different industries and looking forward to the conversation.